Jai Shri Ram. In English language media, stories of atrocities committed against Dalits by upper castes are readily available. As a result, people getting their information about India from such sources are led to believe that this is a major issue plaguing Hindu society today. However, I wanted to raise 3 points to try to combat this narrative. Firstly, the land rights issue. Squabbles over land rights have been globally prevalent throughout history in agricultural societies, and these problems only lessen as there is more land reform passed so that the landless laborers or tenant farmers who work the land are able to gain more rights over the land and, just as importantly, the profits that come from the crops that they work on. As we know, in rural India, largely, landowners tend to be from upper caste groups, and the landless laborers that work their land, while they may be from any caste, are of course disproportionately from lower caste communities. And so when there are conflicts over land rights between these two groups, even though they may be purely based on issues like profit, taxation, tenancy, and so on, just basic tenant versus rentier kind of, or tenant versus landlord kinds of issues, the English language media will portray them as being caste-based. The perfect example of this would be how English language sources treat the Ranveer Sena or the Kuber Sena back when these two groups were active. I'm assuming that people who watch this channel either have no problem with either of these two groups or may have actually supported what these two groups were doing back when they were active. And the reason that I bring this up is because if you read English language sources on these two groups, they will be described as being casteist and upper caste supremacists, and they're trying to subjugate the lower castes and keep them in place, so on and so forth. Nothing is ever said about the fact that these are basic land rights issues common to any kind of society across the world that has an economy that's so based on agriculture like India does, or rural India does. And also, there's no mention that's ever made of the great work that these groups did fighting against the Naxalite Insurgency. As we know, for decades upon decades, Naxalite insurgents who were either communists or pretending to be communists took up armed struggle as domestic terrorists throughout much of North and Central and even parts of South India. I mean, it was a widespread phenomenon. And there were pro-landlord militias like the two groups that I mentioned that fought against this. But again, those kinds of things are not mentioned by these sources, or when they are mentioned, they're not portrayed as being kind of righteously anti-communist and righteously patriotic and so on. They're again just portrayed as being casteist and elitist and so on. So not only do they misinterpret non-caste related issues as caste related issues, they also gloss over a lot of the things that even people who don't really have a dog in the fight of either kind of caste community would be interested in. The second point that I wanted to raise is family and personal squabbles. Due to the intercaste tensions that I mentioned, as well as many other intercaste tensions that we all know exist naturally in the society, as well as the growing prevalence of love marriage and premarital relationships among the youth, there are a number of instances where a Dalit boy is trying to marry an upper caste girl. Right? Now what happens, obviously the family doesn't like this and the boy faces some kind of repercussions. We also know that this is not only a Dalit boy upper caste girl issue. The reverse happens. There are issues with Hindu boys and Muslim girls, Hindu girls and Muslim boys. This kind of intercommunal marriage tension is widespread when you have a society that is traditional, where a bunch of people, because they've stopped caring about such traditions, are trying to get love marriages. These things are naturally going to happen, as we all know. Now, if you're not totally divorced from a traditional family structure, not totally divorced from a traditional idea of what marriage is, meaning the union of two families, not just two individual people who are going to become a nuclear family as if they are part of Western culture. And if you're not so totally divorced from shame culture and at least have some semblance of a sense of camaraderie with people of your own caste, then you would recognize that these issues are basically just, this is how families would deal with something. You know, no, families in general don't want their child to get a love marriage. On top of that, they don't want their child getting a love marriage to someone of a different caste. So part of the kind of violent repercussion that's sometimes faced by these people that engage in this kind of behavior is due to those two things, plus the ever-present low-level tension that's always been there, and not so much related to what is portrayed in the media, which is just a rampant caste hatred of these evil, demonic upper caste who want to just treat lower caste people like slaves. So much of the reason why such unions get opposed and then, boys get beat up or humiliated, or, people will share some WhatsApp message or video and then that becomes viral now in the modern day, and then this becomes a new part of the atrocity literature that people want to use to add on to this narrative, right? So the final point that I wanted to raise as far as this issue is the way that issues concerning blacks in the Western world, especially my own country, the United States, get conflated with Dalit issues. Now, to some degree, this is, of course, a modern phenomenon, though, the Black Panthers did serve as inspiration for a group called the Dalit Panthers that claimed to basically be doing what the Black Panthers did in America for Dalits in India. I think they started in the 1980s, which is 2 decades after the Black Panthers in America were starting up and getting popular. But anyway, we're seeing these kinds of things get put out there, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, that blacks in America are equivalent to Dalits in India, and I'm sure that there are other countries where there's some supposedly oppressed minority group that is trying to attach themselves to this movement also. Now, because of the fact that these people are basically anti-Hindu, anti-national, they want to create more and more division and discord within Hindu society, I don't at all think that this is unexpected or unusual on their part. We just have to be cognizant of it, be aware of it. If you ever have friends or relatives that kind of buy into this narrative or starting to buy into this narrative that you hear in conversations with them or their general views, just be aware of this and be able to talk back. But something that we should be even more cognizant of, and I think on the lookout for, is when people who are quote-unquote on our side of the argument also take to these kinds of views. And what I mean by that is, there is a section of people who are otherwise pro-Hindutva, pro-Bhagwa, and all of those kinds of things that still buy into this kind of caste narrative that I've seen both in conversations with people and in some of the people on YouTube or other kinds of commentators that are out there. They basically see Muslims as being problematic as we do, and Christian conversion and so many other things, but they also buy into this idea that upper caste oppression of lower caste is still a problem in modern India. So we have to be really aware of the fact that those people are among our ranks as well. And, I don't want to say we shouldn't be too cozy with them, but it is something that it's not only an external threat for us ideologically, it's also an internal threat for us ideologically. And I wanted to basically close on this point. Dalit politics is very varied. We have to get past this idea that Dalit politics only means Kanshiram and Mayawati and the BSP and Chandrasekhar Azad Raman and the Bhim army and things of that nature. Dalits are a very large population in India. I think they're somewhere around 20 to 25% of the Indian population. And they make up a part of every single party's support base. And they will try their best to try to steer their whichever party that they support into giving them things that they want through, appeasement or, shifting the narrative, so on and so forth. And so even the party that most of us would support, the BJP, also has this kind of element within it. So we do have to be mindful of that and aware of it, where I don't think any of us wants Hindu society to become so homogenized that there are no castes, there's no caste pride, all Hindus are basically, one saffron-colored cutout of one another. And so we've lost all our individuality, we've lost all of our distinctiveness, we've lost all of what makes us as who we are within the Hindu Samaj, not just Hindus compared to other people. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you noticed me earlier looking down a lot, it's because prior to this video, I wrote down things that I wanted to say and then was kind of reading from it, kind of using it as notes. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Jai Shri Ram.